or break you as a landlord. It can either make it incredibly difficult or incredibly easy. If you're screening people and finding good tenants, being a landlord is not that hard. If you're not screening people and just taking whoever shows up with money, you're in for some trouble.
Yeah. So little, not off topic or anything, but if someone just comes up to you and says, I'll pay a year in advance, that doesn't happen if you have money or you have a good situation. That's always someone who's desperate. So be awfully careful of that. Another thing is my wife has learned this now too, because Nicole has been through a few cycles of turnover tenants, and we don't have this problem at too many places. But another thing I'll get is someone wants to pull you aside and start telling you their story. They've got a story. Let's put it that way. So sometimes you'll get that, and there's some big old warning signs you see there.
Oh, sure, yeah. All cash up front, or a story of why they need somewhere to live, or another one's if they need to move in immediately, right away. Oh, I need to be in tomorrow. That's kind of concerning. Why do you need to be in a day or two later?
Yeah. I've actually always thought that the best tenants are usually found 6 weeks out from the date. The most diligent tenants, the ones who are the planners and very, very great tenants, they'll start shopping 2 months or more out. But the issue is they're not quite ready to buy yet. Those people usually will not rent. They're still looking, right? They're kind of assessing their options. So I find that, like, if I put a property up for rent 8 weeks out, I get a lot of time wasters. There people are going to rent, but they're wasting my time right now. Yeah. So I usually try to put it up 7 weeks out at the most, and 6 weeks out is ideal. If you're in a hot rental market in a hot time of year anyway, 6 weeks you should be able to rent it in the first weekend. If it takes longer than a week, I'd be shocked in a good rental market and price trade, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that, I just had a guy apply 6 weeks out from when he needs the place. Mm-hmm. And he was, in his email, was being proactive because he wants to find somewhere far before he needs to be at his place.
Yeah, so. Right. And so when they get inside of 30 days, those people are not necessarily bad, but they're your procrastinators. They're usually less organized. You can just kind of tell there's a different demeanor. Yeah, not bad. I've had a lot of great tenants who are right around 30 days, sure. but getting under 30 days starts to get to be a problem. And if you get less than, if you get within 2 weeks, probably not. I mean, honestly, I get really poor quality tenants at that time.
Yeah, last minute's not good.
No, you should. Another thing is, if you're a landlord, you should probably drink a lot of coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
It's like,
up answering emails late at night.
Right. It's a hot market. Yeah, so we have a few notes here. Jordan, do you want to start with one of the first most critical things?
Yeah, so you really need to put your written criteria up on your ad or somewhere easily accessible. And it's actually part of fair housing law where you need to publish what your criteria are. So you can't deny someone for criteria that's not made public. So for me, it's 3 times rent, above a 600 credit score, no evictions, and no criminal background. And I make sure everybody knows about that before I start screening people or looking into getting a tenant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Minnesota actually has, now neither one of us are attorneys, but we've read a lot of books on it. So we have some knowledge of the law, and we're not giving legal advice here, but we can tell you that Minnesota does have a law regarding this. If you charge a fee, you're held to some certain standards, and one of those standards are if you decline someone for something that's not on your written criteria and you're charging a fee, you have to give that money back. Okay, so sometimes I've had people kind of grumble at that, or I've heard some like, look, it's not worth the $50 or the $40 or the $35 or whatever the fee is that you need to keep to put yourself in that risk category. So make sure you know that and you're giving the feedback if you decline for someone a reason that's not on your criteria. Mm-hmm. The other thing though is like if they meet your criteria, you have to accept them. Otherwise, you're discriminating, right? So if you say I accept someone that has with all these criteria and they meet that criteria, you don't get to just say, oh, well, I'm not going to approve you. You meet all my criteria, but I'm not going to approve you. Unless there's something that's a non-protected class, a reason why they wouldn't qualify, like I said, something that's not on your list. But it would have to be for a non-protected item as well.
Such as smoking.
Yeah, like you forgot to put no smokers on there, but you happen to figure out that they smoke. That would be a legitimate reason, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Couldn't, if they have kids, you can't deny them because they have kids. And there's a lot of other protected classes, but if they have children, if they're married, if they have a same-sex partner, there's a lot of reasons why you cannot deny somebody.
Correct. So you want to make sure we're not going to go through the whole list today, and I frankly I don't want to miss
no.
one. So I don't want to. I want to give you the list saying it's the definitive list, and then accidentally forget something. So make sure you're checking that out. The fair housing laws. Another mistake I see, like on forums, if any are on Bigger Pockets, often what I see is a lot of people stating things about their local policy when they're really talking about things that are nationally governed. So this is a federal law that you're dealing with when it comes to housing.
Yeah.
The equal housing laws are federal, and so you have to make sure you're following those. I'm going to recommend that you have a criteria for income. Jordan mentioned yours is 3 times income.
3 times, yeah.
That's mine on most of my properties. I have some situations where 3.5, and I will accept down to 2.5. But if they have 2.5 times the income, then they have to increase their security deposit. So you notice there's some flexibility there. But under no circumstances would I accept less than 2.5, and I wouldn't accept 2.5 if they don't meet all the other criteria exactly, right? So I have some flexibility in my guidelines that I've come up with over time, but the flexibility isn't a menu to make all kinds of changes. What it is it's a way to be reasonable. If there's one thing that's not exactly perfect, I can still fit them in a box, but everyone fits in that same box, right? So it's still written, there's still a policy on it. I'm not just making it up as I go, and that's one of the most important things when it comes to housing fairness and housing discrimination.
Sure.
Going to recommend that you have a rental history. For me, I don't allow any unlawful detainers ever. My properties are nice enough and rent quick enough that I don't need to accept someone who's ever had a UD, which is the legal term for not a foreclosure, eviction. Thank you, an eviction. But some people will say not within the last 5 years, not within the last 7, not within the last 10. So that's your call.
I say 7.
You say 7.
And
I've heard that quite a bit.
some of my properties may be a little lower end than the stuff you're dealing with. So, we within 7 years, no UDs or evictions.
Mm-hmm. So criminal history is another one. My criminal history is the most vague one that I have because I say no violent crimes, and that's my single biggest thing. I don't allow felonies unless it's driving related, and I would actually allow potential. Well, I will allow misdemeanor like marijuana and stuff like that. But as a general rule, driving is the only felonies that I would allow. I don't want someone who's had a history of dealing drugs or something like that in my properties.
That'll come back and bite you too. The city can. I was dealing with a landlord recently, and they took her rental license because she wouldn't evict the people that kept getting arrested for dealing drugs out of the house. So it can really affect you. I've never heard that one personally.
So there is I don't remember the exact line in the statute, but there's a line in the statute about this that you can evict someone for drug dealing, but you have to prove it. You have to catch them. This is where I'm a little vague on your standard of proof.
Well, if they get arrested in your apartment.
But right. I actually heard from an attorney who said getting arrested in your apartment is a great one.
Yeah.
And with that, you can terminate the lease actually and have them evicted just for that reason alone. So something to let you know. The last one is I recommend that you have a pet policy. Now there are protected pets like service animals.
Yeah, service.
There's service
emotional
animals,
support animals,
and there's emotional support animals, and they are different. They have different standards, different rules. Again, it's probably not the scope of this video to go through them in great detail. It's actually pretty complicated, and I wouldn't know that I want to go on the record as explaining it because I feel like I could see something incorrectly.
So you want to be careful with ESAs now too, though, because emotional support animals, they do have rights outside of a normal animal.
Correct.
So, yeah, talk to an attorney about that.
One of the big things to know is if they're legitimate, and I do want to phrase that, if they're legitimate, you can't charge extra for them. You can't charge extra rent. You can't charge extra deposit. But if that animal does damage, whether it's a legal animal or not, you can charge for that damage, right? So if the animal chews up the carpet and or whatever the thing might be, you can still charge for that. And there are special rules if the animal would somehow cause you an undue hardship. Generally, that would be a violent dog, where your insurance companies can either not allow it at all, and or is going to increase your costs dramatically for that animal. Again, not legal advice on that one, but just kind of some things to check into.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about verification for a second, like verification and stuff?
Yeah, so everybody talks about calling past landlords. I like to go a step further and call the landlord before where they currently are. So not only will you talk to somebody who they're currently living with, the landlord, you can talk to the person they just moved out of their place. And that's where most damage happens. It's when people are moving out. So I want to talk to the person who took a unit back from them when they moved out, and see what happened with the unit, how they kept it, how they cleaned it, what happened with their deposit. If they were given their whole deposit back, that's a great sign. If they kept all of it, that's a bad sign. You know, there's something happened if they were able to keep their whole deposit. You really want to verify their rental history and how they were with payments, how they've treated the place. It's pretty easy to talk to a landlord. They're going to tell you anything because they're in the business and they've had to deal with things. So if they have a great tenant, they're going to tell you about it. If they have a horrible tenant, they're surely going to tell you about it. And you do want to verify their income. This is as simple as getting bank statements, W-2s, calling the employer, and really just figuring out, does this person actually make 3 times the rent? Or I get lots of applications that say self-employed, $5,000 a month. A little skeptical when I see those. So I need to verify that some way or another. I either need to see their taxes, their bank statements.
That's where the mortgage guy in me comes out, and I verify taxes. So,
Yeah.
I have had mostly it's been Uber drivers for me that have said that, and then surprisingly, when I ask them for taxes, all of a sudden they don't apply even. So
Yeah, it certainly happens.
but I've had the same thing. You know, oh, I make way more than that.
Yeah,
okay, really?
5,000 a month seems to be common.
Yeah.
Oh, I make $5,000 a month. Sure you do. I hope
why,
you do.
why are you not buying a house?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But the thing to keep in mind here is it's important to verify. So you can choose what level of verification that you want, but make sure you're doing something. Just taking their word for it is not the right approach. And plenty of people do that, and plenty of people regret it later. So I personally will maybe talk about some of the documents here in a second that I require. But I verify most of it through documents. We only call if there's a red flag. So for example, if they have a clean rental history on the report, they have good credit, I can see that they make plenty of income and so forth, and there's no reason for me to believe that they would have been a previously bad tenant. I don't call their current landlord. Kind of for one of the reasons is the current landlord's probably, if they, is going to tell me great things anyway because they want them out if they are bad. And if they're, so I usually don't go that step. If there's a red flag, we absolutely do, but most of the time we don't have red flags, luckily.
Sure.
Kind of talked a little bit, or I wanted to mention the process of selecting a tenant.
Yeah. And only one at a time is important too.
Yeah. Well, first of all, in Minneapolis, there is a code around that. And I believe Minnesota, same thing, I believe. So the idea, it's slightly different. Minneapolis and Minnesota have slightly different ones. So I get them confused. But I think the best practice, whether this is the state law or Minneapolis, is for sure to only run one tenant at a time. So when a tenant applies and they've paid a fee, now this is Minnesota, I know, if they paid a fee, you have to either approve them or decline them before moving to the next applicant. I hear from people all the time. They tell me they take a bunch of applications, they mix them in a pile, and they pick the best one. If you're not selecting a fee, there's a chance that that's legal, but it's pretty sketchy for sure. And you're almost for sure in violation of federal housing laws if you do that. If you select a fee, you're definitely in violation of Minnesota law. So one tenant at a time, make a decision on them and move on. So that's important to make sure you do that. Don't just select the best tenant. Imagine if you were an A- tenant in every way. You hit every category, or no, let's just call it an A tenant. You're an absolute A tenant. There's absolutely no flaws, exceptional credit, exceptional income. You blow everything out of the water, and then someone blows you out of the water by 10%.
Yeah.
How is that fair? You apply first, they apply a week later, and they get the place because their credit score is 780 and you're 740. Right? It's just, it doesn't work that way. So don't be that guy. I have documents that I require that I recommend people get. So I recommend that you get a driver's license, and you're going to say, well, why is that? Well, you do want to verify their identity, right?
Citizenship too.
What if they do have a record and they're in, they're giving you a fake name, right? Yeah, citizenship would be something, I suppose. For me, it's that. The biggest reason why I get it is I've only had to take 2 tenants to court. So it's not common in 15 years, but every time I did, I needed their driver's license number in order to sue them. So it's a required field on the small claims court form. So if you don't have a copy of their driver's license up front, how are you going to get it when you're trying to sue them is what I would say. So make sure you have that up front. They'll be happy to give it to you when you apply, but they're not going to give it to you, when they start paying you rent.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of easy ways to screen people too. We're going to just mention a few. I've used all of these except one that Tim's used, but we like Cozy for rent management. You can collect rent on Cozy. You can collect late fees on Cozy. You can all sort of functionality now. I think you can take maintenance requests on Cozy.
Yeah, you can.
You can get renter's insurance through Cozy. You can do, what we're talking about here is you can do the background check and screening through Cozy too, and they directly charge the tenant. So I've used Cozy quite a bit. I've also used Zillow, although I don't love Zillow's format and presentation. And it just doesn't seem as detailed as Cozy. Or My Smart Move is another one that I've used quite a bit. My Smart Move is great. It's easy. The report looks great. Tim's used Rent Application.
Yeah, the one that I use is called rentapplication.net. And I used to use My Smart Move. I think that if you're not used to looking at credit reports, that's the one I would recommend. They have a great, easy use system for sure. The reason why I switched was because I wanted to be able to ask different questions, right? And neither Cozy nor My Smart Move allow you to kind of like make your own application up. Yeah. So what I did is I basically created my own and required certain things. So I require when they apply with me that they have to upload a picture of their ID. They have to upload a picture of their income. Usually it's pay stubs, but it could be something else. They have to upload a picture of their bank statement. And if they have a pet, they have to upload a picture of their pet. And those are all requirements I put into my thing. With the exception of the pet, the first 3 are hard stops. If they don't upload them, they can't apply.
Sure.
So now obviously they could upload the wrong document, but then I'll just decline them. So I like that aspect, and I don't need the pretty factor of the other ones. So the reports are good enough for me. I'm used to reading people's credit reports and stuff. So that's why I use that one. Something on the documents that I didn't get a chance to mention are pay stubs. I always recommend that you make people give you pay stubs or proof of income, and actually proof of bank statement too. You might say, why proof? Because you can ask them if they have a bank statement and they will lie. I've seen it. Anyone who doesn't have a bank statement or a bank account, they're probably going to tell you they do because they want to get approved to rent your place.
And how are you going to collect their rent online if they don't have a bank account too?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, you run into issues with Cozy collecting rent if they don't have a bank account. Then they're going to have to pay you cash or check, and it's not as fun to take that rather than just a deposit in your account at the beginning of the month.
Yep, I've only filed for eviction on one tenant ever. He didn't have a bank account. He lied and said he did.
Oh, really?
Because it was a requirement of my loan, or I'm sorry, of my approval process, but I didn't verify it. So just a little thing that now we require that you verify it. And if they don't have, they try to give you something that doesn't have their name on it, because you can, if you try to print off a Wells Fargo thing online, it won't say their name intentionally for security reasons. Make sure they're giving you something that has their name, has an account number, it's a full-on statement, not just some sort of a printout. just important, 99% of the time it's fine, but the people who need it the most, the ones who are desperate, those are the ones who are going to send you the fake stuff, and those are the ones you don't want. So just verify it, and if they won't give it to you, it might be telling you something.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
But all in all, I think if you screen tenants, you're going to have a much better experience than if you're not screening or not diligent about your screening. You really want to be careful on who you put in your property, because that's the ongoing process. Finding a good property is one thing, but if you fill it with people that are desperate and dealing drugs, you're going to have a horrible experience being a landlord.
Right. So Jordan was pointing to something on the bottom of the sheet. The last thing is there is a pet screening service that I recommend. It's called petscreening.com, and they actually will screen the pet, make sure that it is a registered service animal and stuff. And they actually catch people who are fraudulently trying to pass off, especially support animals.
Sure.
That are not legitimate. So it's worth it. The tenant pays for it, you don't. So it's a way for you to protect yourself. And Jordan mentioned this, but all these screening services, the online ones, the tenant pays the company directly. You don't have to worry. So I used to collect checks back in the day. I've been doing this long enough that there weren't online screening services. So I would collect the check, and then I would run home and quickly, I could go online and put their information in and get a report. Guess what? On the ones I wanted to decline, which back then I used to get quite a few more that were sketchy. On the ones I wanted to decline, all of a sudden I had to then try to cash the check and get it in my account before I told them that they didn't get approved, so that I could actually get the money to pay for the report, because I had to pay for it online with my credit card. And yeah, I know. So I recommend that you just do it online. You don't have to worry about it.
It's easy. It's quick too. You get the report back almost immediately now.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah, it's great.
Cool.
All right.
Well, hey.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
We'll be back here next week with a couple of good deals we've got going right now that we've both helped clients get. So I know it seems like it's hard to find a deal. It's certainly not impossible.
Yeah, right. Thanks, man.
All
Have
right,
a good weekend.
Thank you.
Yep. Cheers.